Hello, everybody. Good evening, perhaps good afternoon, or good morning. We are in our third session or conversation of Kaleidoscopic Conversations. And this evening, we are going to be talking about imposter syndrome and subtopics that kind of cover imposter syndrome as well. So glad that you all have decided to join us. If you want to type in the chat where you are watching from, feel free to do that. Let us know you're here. We can't see you. So if you type in the chat, we'll be sure to say hello, but we're so glad that you're watching. So myself, I'm Lepore Lindsay. I am a workshop facilitator, learning and development professional, and also a speaker. And I absolutely love showing people the value that they bring in the workplace. I will take that in the workplace. And so having conversations and showing your perspective on having those conversations is one of the many ways in order to be able to do that. So now I'm going to turn it over to Gia to introduce yourself, because Gia, you are the first on my screen.
Good evening, or good morning, good afternoon, whatever Lepore said. Everybody, wherever you are. I'm Gia Jurgens. I am a talent development training specialist with Smithfield Foods. I am a friend of Lepore's. So we used to work together, and I have a background in mental health services, government contracting, and now coaching as well. So it's been a wild ride, but happy to see these folks on the call again. I missed y'all last time, so it's nice to be back. Thanks, Lepore.
All right, thank you, Gia. And next on my screen, I have you, Lee.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lee Mooring. Our company is All About One, and we do coaching and training, and we also do Christian theater productions. So I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Lee. And next we have Matthew.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matthew Mangiapane. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in New York. I have a private practice, and I also work for a mental health housing agency that specializes in helping homeless veterans.
Thank you, Matthew. And last but not least, we have Denicia.
Hey, y'all. I'm Denicia Hilton Harper. Hey. I'm an authentic leadership and holistic well-being consultant at Hilton Holistic Health and Wellness, LLC, where we get to play at the intersection of authentic leadership and holistic health so that you can actually use those messages of your whole body and how they are informing your unique, perfect, authentic leadership style. So you get to do that in all areas of your life with clarity, confidence, and compassion.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you all so much for joining. Those of you, Gia, Lee, Matthew, and Denicia, thank you for joining. And for those of you who are watching, thanks for joining. All right, we're going to talk about imposter syndrome. So tell your friends, your family members to go ahead and log in, because we're not going to be here all night talking about it, but it's going to be a really, really good conversation. So just to kind of go ahead and get this conversation started, earlier I had posted about a situation where I had kind of mentioned as far as the goals that I was attempting to reach, and someone basically assumed that it was imposter syndrome. Like, hey, you have imposter syndrome. And for those of you who may not be familiar with this is, it's essentially feeling anxious or feeling inadequate about being able to achieve a goal. And so they were basically insinuating, or just directly stating, honestly, that I was faced with imposter syndrome. And then so this thought came up. This happened a couple months ago. And so this thought came up, well, is every time that we have doubts, especially when it comes to career progression in the workplace, is this something that is tied to Denisia's face? Is this something that is tied to imposter syndrome? So I really want to know your thoughts and hear what each of you have to say.
Why do we always do this? Okay, I'm gonna jump in. So, so the question is, is it always imposter syndrome? You know what? I don't think it is. I think that, we're in a society today where we want to label everything. And with that, I think we run into a situation where we can over exaggerate or mislabel things or discount things or take away things. I mean, just because of the fact that you feel inadequate or shy or anxious about one little thing, now we just take you and put you into the box. No, we all have those moments of let me go this route for a second. When I think of imposter syndrome, I think of when we have when we're not confident on things, and it's even though we know that we kind of compare ourselves to others, and we don't feel like we measure up to where they are. I know for myself, I've gone through it, but I don't think that every time we're anxious or something, or we're a little timid about, you know what, we're just timid, we're just shy, we're just anxious, we're not, it's not imposter syndrome. So I think that we shouldn't actually get into that area of labeling all the time. Let's just, instead of putting that label on somebody, how about we reach out and see how we can help them get to the next level, or try help them to get where they're trying to go.
It's that church finger. No, let me stop. Lee, love it. The labels can be definitely troubling, Lepore, that reminds me of something that just happened to me the other day, actually, where somebody projected onto me that I had limiting beliefs. And I'm like, first of all, I'm just like, because I don't agree with what you're saying, it just means that I don't agree with what you're saying. This is what I believe. You know what I mean? And it's not limited. How are you going to tell me what's limited and how you know what I'm saying? So that's how that literally, as you were saying, what happened in your experience, I'm like, dang, y'all same thing. So, and I think too, when people do go through those experiences of anxiety or the doubt, the thoughts of doubt and whatnot, when they're looking at something, just listen to it. That's all it is. It's just saying, this is new. Whatever you're reaching for, whatever you're trying to do, that's different. It's literally just your body and whole ecosystem is like, this is new. And it's like an acute fight or flight response, because survival, right? Like, you're going around in a forest and it's just like, I ain't never been here in this forest before. So you're acutely aware, to a lot of things. And it's like, well, I haven't been here before. So you're going to have all of those thoughts, those fears and stuff. And so I feel like when people just automatically jump to imposter syndrome, we're not honoring the emotional process and the robust emotional process that's out there for us to experience. And so to me, it's just another way that we're trying to bypass the emotional health.
Mm.
And instead, I feel like instead of the labeling, we can invite, okay, you're saying that you have this anxiety. Where are you feeling it? And I know I'm coming in from a different perspective from the health background, right? But it's like, man, if it's anxiety and you're feeling it in a certain area of your body, it's informing you about that, what part of the anxiety it's influencing. So like, is it this moving forward part, or is it something from the past? So it's kind of, so I feel like, yeah, just jump into conclusions and saying imposter syndrome versus like sitting with and appreciating, asking someone to express, asking someone to go and actually start to see where those emotions are coming from.
Yeah.
That to me, then, as you venture on into whatever newness that is, it's like, oh, that's truly empowering, right? Because then as you continue, you get to see like, yeah, I did that. Even though I was scared, even though I doubted myself. So I feel like that's much more, it offers a much more meaningful process.
We have a statement here. It says imposter syndrome is very popular in the entertainment industry, especially, excuse me, especially when they see the ones around them getting all the great roles. But I firmly believe that when it's your season, it's your season. Absolutely. Absolutely. And
that right there. We're done for tonight. See y'all.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And I feel like too, between you, Lee, and you, Denicia, like there's like this recurring theme when it comes to kind of being in touch with what we're feeling, but also that mental health aspect. And I know that both Matthew and Gia both have some background in that mental health piece. And so is that, I don't want to force y'all to talk about that piece, right? But I'm just going to put that out there, that I don't know if that's something that you all wanted to kind of touch on a little bit, because I know that it can be kind of tricky and balancing when we're talking about, limiting beliefs, and we're talking about the things that we've been exposed to, but at the same time, we don't necessarily want people to deflect it on us, but more so tapping and involved with ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
So imposter syndrome, I tend to really think of how strongly it can affect somebody internally. I keep going back to one of the first things I did when I was out of grad school. I had received a job. I was working for about a year or so, and my colleague asked me if I could speak to her class about what it's like getting a job outside of grad school, because so many of them were so concerned about what the job market was going to look like. And I remember even at that time thinking, well, what do I know? How am I going to speak to this class of people who are only maybe 2 years younger than me and say, hey, everything's going to be good. Take it from me. I have a job. But when you get caught in that almost negative feedback loop within yourself, you start to the positives start to get clouded. Like, I was able to obtain a job. I finished my grad program. It's not that I'm some superhero that found the secret to life or anything like that, but I had some skills that got me to where I am, and that's okay to recognize that. It doesn't necessarily mean you're minimizing other people's experiences or skills. You're just looking within yourself and saying, I do have that strength. And I think when we get caught up in that imposter syndrome thought process, we're thinking we don't have the skills that we actually do have, or we don't have the strength that we actually do have. And that, of course, can affect so many other aspects of your life. That one of the big things is just trying to recognize, you're here, it's your season. So you're here, just like I'm going to pronounce it incorrectly, but Collecta said, knowing that you have that ability or that skill is a good thing. And it's okay to acknowledge that without being overly braggadocious about it. But when you have that strong imposter syndrome feeling, it kind of goes in the opposite direction. You lose sight of the skills that you do have, or the skills you can build up.
You bring up another really good point, Matthew, which is kind of like that. It's not necessarily that overestimating, and it's not underestimating, but it really is just trying to gauge where you are within that. Gia, so what is your take on what's your take on imposter syndrome?
Matt, whenever you were talking, the word that popped in my head is spiraling. And I know so many people, I am guilty, so guilty of this loop. You called it negative loop. I call it spiraling. I really think when it comes to like imposter syndrome and all these emotions, we get in our own way and kind of talk ourselves out of having a positive experience a lot of the times. In one of our classes that we teach at my job is emotional intelligence. And I tell my clients, we have our like conscience. We all have a Jiminy Cricket. And it would be great if the Jiminy Cricket would say awesome things like, you're amazing, Gia. You can do anything. You can take on the world. But it's usually the other Jiminy Cricket saying, you don't deserve this. It's not your time. Of course that didn't work out. I know I hear that in my head a lot. And whenever, you have those experiences, like there's one office that I go to and they are so quiet every time that we have a class. And the entire time I'm like, it's terrible. They hate it. They think I'm an idiot. Like I start having that spiraling conversation in my head. And then at the end of it, I'm looking at like the Survey Monkey and it's like, well, hot damn, they really liked that. They learned something. They liked the lame dad jokes I do. Cause if y'all can't tell already, I have really lame humor. But the point being is it's like, I made that a really poor experience for myself. It was nobody else's thing. And I think, big picture coming from like the corporate world, I think a big reason why people love that label of imposter syndrome is because they lack training before they're put in front of an audience. And so they don't feel confident, like for real. They are not, because they don't know what they're talking about. A lot of times they're kind of just that person, and they're instantly pulled into a situation that they don't have the whole history for, which I don't think is fair at all, but I know it happens. So, why didn't you make this 3 hours long, Lapora? We should have a 30-minute. Oh, here we go.
So Sabina says, imposter syndrome used to be something we did to ourselves, but I feel that lately it is something someone accuses us of as a mean to put us in a bad light to others or to control the narrative. How do you handle that both privately and publicly? Who wants to take a stab?
Is that what y'all do? The church finger? Is that it? Okay. I was raised Catholic, y'all. We didn't do that. We did this.
Well, if you do that, we know what you're talking about.
All right, I'm here. I think this is a great question. Number one, Sabina. I think number one, it depends on your relationship with that person, your rapport. If it's your boss, if it's some like a cross-functional team that you're working with, your comfortability having that one-on-one conversation. I think it also depends on your communication style. So I know in the first episode, we kind of talked about everybody's different. I'm very direct. I have no problem having a conversation. Say, Lepore, you were really mean on the call the other day. I don't know why. I know that's not for everybody. She is constantly. No, I'm joking. Lepore has never been mean to me in the entirety I've known her. But I think that that is also an opportunity. So if it's a private conversation, okay, you think it's imposter syndrome. Nope, this is actually how I feel. So going back to what Denicia was saying, let me tell you what's actually going on, and kind of standing up for yourself and having that kind of advocate moment with that person one-on-one, which those are magic when they do happen, even if they're really sticky and not fun when they're going on. Publicly, I mean, you can, I've had people say that to me in the middle of class, and I've said, I'm not sure if I agree with that, but I'd love to talk to you one-on-one after class about that, or after the meeting, because you don't want to create a hostile environment or get really defensive, because that's just going to make conflict like go way up, and you don't want that. So I don't know. Matt, any words of wisdom from your experience? You're like the calmest energy. I think you're calmer than Lee, actually. I don't know.
Because I'm presentable for these things. It's difficult. I agree with you actually on how you would handle something like that in public, whether it's in a meeting or in a classroom or in a conference, anything. It's going to be difficult, especially if it's somebody who's, let's say, been egging you on a little bit, or if it's somebody you know has some ongoing conflict with you. But keeping your composure and being able to be straight and narrow with it and say, again, I disagree with you, or I think we can have a conversation about this later. I think that's a good way to get it out of that public atmosphere and get it into more of a private conversation. If you're able to have that private conversation with that person, that's great. I almost think of it, handling it almost internally, trying to understand for yourself that this person could be saying this for any number of reasons. You're not going to know why they're thinking this about you. You're not going to know what's going on with them. It could be jealousy. It could be feeling that they don't have the abilities that you do. It could be they just had a bad day that day. It could be something else is going on and it's coming out in a different way. They had a fight with their girlfriend that morning, or their kid kept them up all night overnight crying every 2 hours, which I am familiar with. But understanding that you still have the ability and the skills and the composure to be where you are in that place and time can help you feel a little stronger in knowing you're there doing whatever it is, leading the team, helping on a project, whatever it is, you're there because you have that ability to do it, and recognizing that and understanding that, and maybe walking away from that person and just agree to disagree might be the best way to deal with it privately and internally.
Yeah. And one thing I would like to, I'm sorry, go ahead, Denicia.
Oh, real quick. I was going to say that, was it Sabina or Sabina? It's gone off. So
yeah, I can show it again for you.
Please forgive
Sabina.
me. Sabina. Okay. In the way that the question is phrased, it almost feels like possibly some situations where people are using it as a way of projecting, almost in a way to, as it was said, like make themselves look better. You not so. I kind of do something a little bit different because hey, asking about publicly, I mean they chose to project that and label it publicly. So I would actually counter with, sure, I actually really don't agree with that label, but I am curious, and I do see that this is an opportunity for us to actually talk about imposter syndrome. So because you came to that conclusion, I'm curious as to what is your definition. I'm curious as to what is it that you're seeing in my behavior and in what I'm expressing right now. And And then, you just kind of vibe and see what their response is. If it was something to make you look worse than, you know how this is going to go. And then if it was a true, no, I really did think that you had imposter syndrome, then I feel like it would serve a very great learning lesson for everyone who's in the room, right? And it's not combative. It really can. And because you're presenting it, you're prefacing it by saying, you're thinking this, possibly others are too. So let's explore what our definitions, our interpretations are. And like I said, what behaviors is it that I'm showing that had you come and be drawn to that conclusion? So you're also putting it back on them, right? Like that you came to that conclusion. So now you take ownership for your perspective, ownership for your projection, right? And we can still open up and have that open communication and dialogue about it, and it serve as a learning opportunity for everyone that's there. If it starts to get combative, then that's when you can shift it and say, we can continue it privately. But I did want to take this opportunity because you brought it up. Now I'll go ahead and address it and just kind of see where you at, what you thinking, how you thinking about it,
Yeah, that's good. Both handling it privately or publicly. I like that there's different perspectives on what would potentially be the best way. And I think a large part of that as well is how you're feeling at that moment, how the other person is feeling at that moment, and how you typically address that. Lee, I don't want to cut you off if you have something that you wanted to share as well.
I'm in agreement with what everyone else said. Just to add is, just to reiterate, just ask the person, what did you mean by that? Let them explain.
Yeah.
I believe that praise in private and punish in or praise in public and punish in private. However, there are situations where, when someone, I think as long as we're being professional, for me, it's about two things: being professional and saying something out of love. And if you do both of them, I think that you will have on your end, you can come across as just as such, rather than hostile or vindictive or mean. But if you're professional about the situation, because, let's be honest, somebody's gonna call you out in front of people. And it's very tough to sit there and take it. And we all have that. We want to defend ourselves. And so I believe if there's somebody out there in the audience, we'll just call them an idiot for now. But if they're out there and they want to say something like that, then you know what? Put them on the spot, make them explain. And to the point where, because sometimes folks will yell out things. Oh, you got imposter syndrome. Okay, what do you mean by that? What makes you believe that? What behavior did I exhibit? Just go on and on. And I think that the point will be, one, that you're being professional, but then you also, I think some degree, you got to put that person in place, because that's inappropriate. If they're being rude or disrespectful to a speaker, I think also, if we happen to be in that audience, I think that if you have someone who's shy or timid that's up in front, I think we have a responsibility. People that are more bolder or outgoing in our personalities, maybe Denicia and her personality, to say, hey, you know what? Hold on a second. You said this to them. Explain, because often people get put on the spot and there's nobody there to stick up for them. And I hate to see that when someone is picked on for no reason. I think those people that do that are bullies, and I think somebody in the room has an obligation to speak up for that person. Sorry if I went down a different road, but
main point,
call them out. Yeah. Love.
So I love that we have, varying opinions on as far as how to proceed with it. The other thing that I'm really picking up on is, because we have another comment here from Collecta. It says, imposter syndrome will make you forget all the success and hard work that you have already accomplished. So when we look at this comment and then we look at Sabina's comment, and we see that there are two sides to this topic that we're talking about this evening, and that is, and I've heard it from several of you. Sorry, I can't recall exactly who, but as far as imposter syndrome is something that we need to figure out. We have to decide. And I'm not sure if there is any situation, and let me know if someone disagrees with me or not. I'm not sure if there's any situation if I can look at you, Gia, you, Lee, you, Matthew, you, Denicia, and say you have imposter syndrome, because there's just too many different factors that are going on. Like there's a lot of variables there that we're just not aware of, and it's something that we have to figure out for ourselves. And so I really want to know your thoughts about that. Like, is it something where somebody else do they have the ability after a conversation to make that conclusion? Is it something where we're just trying to label, or is it something where it has to be each individual person for themselves to determine if imposter syndrome is in fact something that they are dealing with?
I could start off a little bit about that.
Yes.
Now, from my perspective, from where I see it, it to me is a very internal thing, and individualized. If somebody asked me if I thought I had imposter syndrome, I would say absolutely. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm feeling that every moment of the day, but I know I've struggled with that myself, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that do. And I think it could mean a lot of different things for different people, but ultimately it does kind of come down to how each individual feels about themselves and about whatever it is they're trying to achieve that's bringing up those feelings of imposter syndrome. So if somebody's looking to advance in their career or start their own business, it could kick off those thoughts of, well, what do I know? How do I know this? There are people doing this 10 years, 20 years. My best friend started a business and he's the most successful person I've ever met. I don't know anything. But again, it goes back to what I was saying before, where it starts to cloud the actual strengths and skills that you have. And that, again, could look very different for many different people. It could even go into, and I'm veering into my wheelhouse, but it could lead to relationship issues because you're thinking, I don't measure up to this person, or I don't have what it takes to keep this person around because there's things about me that are a deficit, which aren't necessarily deficits. But again, it's that imposter syndrome kicking things up and strengthening those negative feelings, which is not good. Can somebody else identify that in another person? I really am not sure I could say that somebody could without really knowing the person they're trying to figure it out with. So I wouldn't go up to my friend of 10 years and say, you have imposter syndrome. He could just be going through a bad day about something, or he's struggling with something. And even if I know him really well, he's not necessarily feeling he can't do certain things. Maybe he's struggling in different ways. So I think it's much harder to identify it in other people, but I think identifying it within yourself is very individualized because it does look very different for everybody, or at least what triggers it is very different for everybody.
So bringing in the medical background, right? Like a lot of people don't even realize that in Western medicine, syndrome came from the whole, well, it's not this, so we're just going to create a whole term that's just going to be our catch-all term. Like literally, if you just look at breaking it down from imposter syndrome, like it's like, oh, we're just going to have this whole catch-all term for the doubt that you might experience, or for the anxiety that you might experience, the fear, like, and we're just going to put it all together, right? Like, it's another example of, hey, coming out with the original Twitter of 120 characters. We're just literally trying to find ways to put people in these boxes that don't take a lot of words. So you're trying to succinctify, is that a word? Succinctify people. And thanks, Lisa, it's a word. Dictionary.com, let's add it.
I knew what you meant.
So like, I feel like that's just what it is. Like, why can't we just call it for what it is? It's doubt. It's fear. It's I'm scared. It's I don't know. And I feel like if you're going to your question though, about like, can you really assess that in someone else? No. Like, I really don't think that you can at all. What you can do is facilitate the conversation to suss out what are those emotions that they're experiencing, and you doing so without the judgment. Don't encourage the judgment. Don't take us to comparisonville that we talked about last week, right? It's just how present can you keep that person when they're talking with you? Even for yourself, how present can you be? Collective said it will make you forget everything that you did, right? Like, and so being in the present moment It's just seeing that this is just a little grain of sand in a great big beach with some beautiful waves that's going, and it's like, just like everything else, you're going to figure it out, or a resource, a tool, or someone else is going to come in and be able to support you. Like, that's all that it is. We didn't know how to use email when it first came out, right? Like, we didn't know how to walk, but we did it. And so I feel like, yeah, don't try to put yourself in a position where you're going to try to classify and label other people. But you can invite the conversation if they're close to you, a client or employee or whomever, to facilitate them being able to bring that out, like to express that. Because by the time they have they're spiraling, they would have already been in their head, guaranteed, a heck of a lot longer before they might actually verbalize it to someone. And so you might have that chance to allow them to express it in a safe space, and with knowing that you're not going to judge them, knowing that you're not going to be like, oh, that's bad, that's horrible. Like, right? They just want you to get it out, and then just be present with it is how I see it.
Can I say amen? Amen. So, quick comment. I love what you said, how you broke it down into so many different words. And it made me think about this, that in essence, it almost sounded like somebody's just giving you a backhanded comment. It's like they don't have the courage to call you those other words, but let's just go ahead and this is a nice word that sounds professional. Let's use this. And going back to Matthew's point, are they qualified? I mean, we hear it all the time when we have that person at work who one day they're nice, then 10 minutes later they're mean. And we can't say that person is bipolar. We're not qualified to do that. So it goes back to what you're talking about, Denicia, about the labeling. Let's just remove the labels and just ask people, instead of putting it out there, you have this, or maybe even in a question, perhaps did you think about maybe this, what are you feeling? But going to the situation, caring about someone rather than pointing the finger. Because another thought that's been going through my mind as listening to this is, one, what are people's motives by saying it, like Matthew talked about? And then I also think that in a way they may be projecting what's going on in their own lives.
Absolutely. And we get the silent finger snaps and jazz hands. Gia, do you have anything to add?
I think my main thought that comes with this is we as a society have a problem with people being vulnerable with us. And I think the ideology of projecting, like, oh, they're just dealing with imposter syndrome. It's kind of like a check in the box. I don't have to necessarily deal with it if I just tell them that, that's their problem and I can just step away from it and not even engage. I see it all the time in work and I hate it. I'll be honest. But it's like, it's the human experience, y'all. We all have feelings. Like, I don't know. I worked with somebody and she had a nicer way than I say it, but she says common sense is not common practice. We all know that we have human emotions. We all struggle. I mean, I've been training for years, and every time I get in front of like a big group of people, I still heart palpitations, I know it. And it's like, oh God, is this going to be a great time or bad time? So it's just, I wish that we were better about it. I think that with conversations like this, and obviously everybody on the call, I can already tell, even though I've never met you in person, we create a safe place for our folks that we work with. So it's definitely going to change the game as the new generations take over. But this is an interesting problem. And I was just telling Lepore before everybody popped on, I was like, it was like after COVID, it became like the new thing, like the trend. It's like imposter syndrome. And then like mental health became like the new fad. And it just it irks me because this is something we should have been worrying about a long time ago, constantly. Like, it's not a new thing. It's not new that people go to therapy. People have been going to see Matt for a while. Okay. So people have been going to Denicia for a while and Lee. So I hope that these conversations, whoever is listening out there, wherever you are, whatever time it is, that you know that there are people out there that are here for the right reasons and that actually care and that want to have the discussion and understand that you're human and none of us on the call are perfect. We'll never be perfect.
Never.
And that's one of the things, like for public speaking, for instance, that's like a huge thing that a lot of my clients they say they suffer from imposter syndrome as soon as they get in front of an audience. Again, I've been doing it for years. It doesn't mean that I feel like it's a cake in the, a walk in the park or whatever. It's not easy, even for somebody that's a guru or whatever you want to call people that have done it for a long time. So I don't know. It's just the big thing, my big takeaway, and I think it's something that everybody on the call has said today. You have to advocate for yourself, whether it's with sock and boppers like Denicia, just heading straight on, talking about it in public, or maybe more reserved and just like having a one-on-one conversation. You got to talk about it, at least try, and at least try to put yourself out there because you will be surprised how people respond to you. And if it's not in a good way, then it shows you how they feel about your relationship. So there you go. That's my 2, 3, 5 cents. So I'll stop.
2, 3, 5 cents. Love it. All right. So I don't know if there were any additional questions or comments, but feel free to use that chat for those of you who are watching. We're getting ready to wrap up here. But by all means, I don't want to let anyone miss the opportunity to share or comment or ask a question. So some things that I've kind of gathered from everything that you all shared today or this evening, whenever you're watching, is advocate for yourself, which Gia just mentioned, but I heard it throughout as well, as far as from Denicia, I think Lee, and I think even Matthew, I think you've all said it as far as advocating for yourself. And that is when you're feeling like perhaps someone is trying to deflect or push imposter syndrome on you. And it may not be the case. And we're not saying by any means that imposter syndrome is not real. It is very real. And I have experienced it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every situation warrants that. And the other thing about that is that we feel different moments at different times of the day. I heard that several times throughout our lives, where sometimes we'll feel really confident about something and sometimes we don't. It doesn't mean that we have imposter syndrome. Sometimes it could just be self-doubt. Sometimes it can be, but that really brings me to the last point. Next to the last point that I heard throughout as well. And that is that we really do have to check in with ourselves and do that own individualization and figure out like what is going on within us. How consistent is this? How strong is this? What are those triggers for us with this particular case? And that last part is really having those conversations. If we feel like someone could be potentially struggling in an area, don't make any assumptions because we know what assuming does. Or I just made an assumption by assuming that you know what assuming does. But have those conversations with other people. And I feel like this whole mini series has been about that in all reality. Like it's been about having those conversations, getting to know people, and instead of jumping to conclusions, just talk to people and figure out like what it really is. Now, I would like to go around one last time. If you all can share one last takeaway that you want to share and how people can reach you, if you can do it in about a minute or so each, and then we'll close out after that. Or not.
I thought we were going in order again. Okay, so I'll go ahead. So,
okay, go ahead,
you know what? Thank you so much. You know what? There's really nothing to say after you wrapped it up. You know, why speak after the benediction? That was great. Thank you. Thank you for having me. This has been wonderful discussion. This is an eye opener for me as well. So thank you so much. If you want to get in touch with me, All About One, you can follow me on any social media platform or come to our website, allaboutone.com. Thanks.
I agree. It was a real pleasure for me to get to know everybody and have these conversations with everybody. I think it was really great to hear the different perspectives that we bring to these topics too. I'm always a big believer in wanting to hear other sides of the story. So it's nice to hear how other people experience and react to situations. I can be found at mjmwellnessny.com. MJM Wellness NY is also my social media handles. Feel free to drop a line.
I'll go, Gia.
I'm like, it's only two of y'all.
I'll go, Gia. Yeah, this definitely has been like so awesome and amazing, and yeah. So I wanted to kind of offer words of encouragement in the sense of where it is that the inkling of a feeling, the inkling of a thought that whatever is saying, I feel impostery right now. Like, couple of things I just wanted to point out is one, consider your language. Just say you're experiencing it versus I am or I have, because that's actually implying ownership of it. So experiencing it creates that space that things can change and it could go away, and because it will. That feeling will go away. It's fleeting. And then also, it will seem like it's impostery because guess what? Whatever you're about to do actually means that you have the courage to do something new and different. That means that it is a part of you that you're trying, like you're creating, right? And so, yeah, it feels impostery because it's new. But it doesn't mean that you yourself, have imposter syndrome or that you are an imposter. It's just that it's all brand new, and because you have that courage to just keep going, like you got it, right? And piggybacking off of last week and things from the first week, get yourself in an environment with a support system that's going to remind you that you got it. It's you. We see you. We see what you're doing. Let us know what we can do to keep supporting you, and in whatever way that is. So yeah, just want to leave it at that. Anybody wants to continue this conversation with me, I'm game. It's at Denicia Hilton is my handle on the platforms on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. And then you can also check me out, deniciahilton.com.
Awesome sauce. Thank you.
I say that too.
I don't have an imposter syndrome right now, y'all. I'm just experiencing. No, I'm joking. Kind of. I don't know. We're all tired. It's the end of the week, y'all. It's Friday Eve, as I call it. God bless. Okay. To wrap it up, don't dance too much, Lepore. I'll be dancing after we get off because I don't know if y'all want to see that. Words of wisdom, I would say, what's best for you. Again, it's not a generalized journey. All the things that we've talked about, use that support system. And at the end of the day, I think this was one of the comments that Lepora got on one of her posts about this. Know that you're not alone. Everybody feels this at one point, sometimes multiple times in a day. Sometimes it's just we get in those ruts, and there are periods. We talk about life throwing you lemons. I like to call those curveballs to the face sometimes, and they knock you off your feet. And it seems like we go through those rainy periods, and a lot of times we end up feeling like all the things we talked about on these episodes that we've put together, or I should say Lepora put together and brought us all together. But just try your best. If you can give 40% and show up and you do the 40%, great. You did a great job that day. So just speak. I say lead with grace. I think that's a big thing that we need to be better about overall, and just be kind to yourself. Kindness makes the world go round. Before I give my contact information, let us know in the comments if you would like a season 2 of this. Because I'm kind of if y'all are. I had a lot of fun. I hope everybody else that was a listener did as well. Jazz hands. But if you would like to stay in touch, you can find me on LinkedIn, Gia Jurgens, my Instagram, that I just revamped that's not kind of work related is called At My Kind of Therapy. So thanks, everybody. It was a blast. And Lepora, kudos to you, my friend. This was awesome.
Thank you,
Very
thank you,
good.
thank you. Well, no one said that they wanted a season 2, so we won't be doing that. I'm just kidding, y'all. We could talk about it if y'all want to do it. But yes, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for tuning in over this last couple of weeks. If you missed any of the conversations that we had, just look up Kaleidoscopic Conversations, and you can catch. It was just three different conversations that we had on conversations in general, with disagreement, on comparison, and then imposter syndrome. Hold on, we got a comment here. There are a lot of love signs. Oh, for season. Oh, I can't see the love signs. Oh, oops, my bad. All right, so I guess we'll talk about it. We'll do that. Thanks everyone for watching. Have a good night. Get some rest or have fun starting your day. Bye.
Everybody.
Bye, everybody.